I clearly remember the first day when the initial signs of suspicion began to emerge. It was a weekend afternoon when we were preparing for a family outing. My wife, at that time, seemed to always have something hidden deep within her. She no longer spoke to me with the ease and naturalness she once did. Whenever I asked about her work, she would only give short, evasive answers, often avoiding my gaze. This change, although small, was like a scratch on the perfect painting of our lives. At first, I thought it was just due to the stress of work, or perhaps she was tired from her role as a new mother. But gradually doubts began to creep into my mind. The long phone calls she claimed were from colleagues, the late nights she returned home with the excuse of meetings, all of these things made Alimony start asking questions I didn't verstehen want to know the answers to. I tried to ignore those negative thoughts, telling myself that I was just imagining things. But my heart couldn't be at peace. I decided to investigate quietly, checking her messages and emails. Although I didn't find any clear evidence, the intuition within me grew stronger by the day. Then one day, while tidying up the living room, I happened to find an old photo of her with a man I had never met. My heart felt like it was being crushed when I realized it was her high school boyfriend. Old memories suddenly flooded back, her stories about a deep but incomplete first love. Could it be that this was the man she had betrayed me with? Fear started to grow, and I couldn't focus on work or anything else. My mind was constantly haunted by images of them together. I decided to confront her, but deep down I still hoped that it was all just a misunderstanding. That night, after our son had gone to sleep, I sat down at the dining table, facing her. I started with gentle questions, but when I didn't get satisfactory answers, I couldn't keep calm anymore. I showed her the photo I had found and demanded an explanation. She was silent at first, avoiding my eyes, but then tears began to fall down her cheeks. She admitted that there had been one moment of weakness, a mistake she regretted immediately after it happened. She assured me that the love between us had never wavered, that it was just a moment of weakness when she felt lonely in this new life. But that explanation wasn't enough to soothe the pain in my heart. How could I ever trust her again when she had broken the trust we had built over the years? Could a single betrayal be forgiven, or was it just a sign that our marriage was coming to an end? The answer remains open, but I know that, from that moment on, our lives had changed forever. 2 years earlier, in the 5th year of my marriage to Emily, our family life was quite peaceful. Emily was a devoted wife and a caring homemaker, while I took on the main financial responsibilities for the family. Every day, Emily took care of the house and our children while I was busy at work, ensuring that our lives were well provided for. That day, after we dropped the kids off at school, Emily received an unexpected message. It was an invitation to a class reunion from her old friends. I still remember clearly how her face lit up with a smile as she looked at her phone screen, as if it reminded her of long-lost memories of her youth. That evening, as we sat at the dinner table, Emily mentioned the reunion. She seemed quite excited but also a bit hesitant. I could sense the reluctance in her voice as she said, "Honey, I got an invitation to a class reunion from some old friends. It has been a long time since I have seen them." I understood Emily's concerns. As a mother, she always put the kids first, but I also knew she needed time for herself, to meet up with friends and relax. So I looked at her, smiled, and said, "Go ahead, Emily. I'll take care of everything at home, look after and pick up the kids. You need some time for yourself, and meeting up with old friends is a good thing. I'm sure you'll have a great evening." Emily looked at me with grateful eyes, and I could see the relief on her face. "Thank you so much. I'm really lucky to have you." I just smiled back, not thinking much of it. At that time, all I wanted was for Emily to have a fun and relaxing evening. She deserved it after all the days of tirelessly taking care of the family. When the day of the reunion arrived, Emily got ready carefully. She chose a dress I hadn't seen her wear in a long time, lightly applied makeup that still accentuated her natural beauty. I remember joking with her at that moment, "You look so beautiful, everyone will be amazed." Emily giggled, came over, and gave me a light kiss on the cheek. "Don't worry, I'll be home early." That evening I stayed home with the kids. I prepared dinner, helped them with their homework, and then put them to bed. Everything went smoothly, but I still felt a bit uneasy. I didn't know where this feeling came from, only that it wasn't strong enough to make me worry too much. That night, Emily came home later than expected. When she walked in, she seemed tired, but her eyes were filled with joy and excitement. She told me about the stories her old friends shared, the memories they reminisced about. I listened, smiled, and was happy to see that she had a truly meaningful evening. After that reunion, our lives seemed to continue as usual. Emily returned home, continued in her role as a wife and mother, while I buried myself in work to ensure the family was well provided for. She asked for my permission to meet up with her old friends every weekend, and I agreed without hesitation, thinking she deserved some relaxation after spending so much time in the kitchen. As for our children, they would spend the day with their grandmother.
Switching to Emily's perspective. After that class reunion, I often spent weekends meeting up with my old friends. Daniel knew about this, but didn't object, because I had shown him the group of old friends I met, and they were all women. That weekend, as usual, I went to the gathering with my old friends. It was a beautiful day, the air was fresh, and I was in a pretty good mood. Daniel fully trusted what I said, and I felt relieved to continue these meetings without making him worry. When I stepped into the familiar cafe where we usually gathered, I was surprised to see a face I hadn't seen in a long time. Leo, the captain of the high school basketball team, and someone I had once secretly admired, was standing there, My heart skipped a beat, and memories of youth suddenly came flooding back, making my heart race. Leo noticed me and smiled brightly. He walked over, his deep, warm voice still as familiar as ever. "Emily, long time no see, you still look as beautiful as you did in high school." I smiled back, trying to stay calm. "Leo, I can't believe I am seeing you here. It has been so many years, how have you been?" He nodded, his eyes never leaving me. "I am doing well. And you? How is life?" "I am good too. My little family is very happy, and work is stable," I replied. But inside, I couldn't stop wondering why Leo had shown up today. We found a private spot in the cafe and talked about old memories. Leo shared stories about the years after graduation, the places he had traveled to, and the successes he had achieved. I listened, unable to stop feeling admiration and nostalgia for his presence. Leo looked at me with a pensive gaze. "Emily, do you remember how we used to talk after every basketball practice? Those were really carefree and happy times." I smiled, recalling those moments. "Yes, those were beautiful days. I still remember every time you led the team to victory, the whole school would cheer." He laughed heartily, but then became more serious. "I remember too, especially the times we talked. You always made me feel at ease after every tough match." I felt my cheeks blush and tried to stay composed. "Really? I didn't realize you remembered so well." The conversation continued in a pleasant atmosphere, as if time had turned back, taking us back to the carefree years of our youth. Although it was in the past, I couldn't deny that my heart still raced when I was near Leo. I knew this was just a chance encounter, and that my life now was far different from those days. But the fluttering feeling reminded me that some things in the heart are not easily forgotten. When the gathering ended, Leo looked at me with a gentle smile. "Emily, it was really nice to see you again. I hope we will have the chance to meet more often." I nodded, returning his smile. "Yes, it was great to see you too. See you next time, Leo." On the way home, I couldn't stop thinking about today's encounter. Old emotions had been awakened, making it impossible for me to stop thinking about Leo. But I knew that my life now was different, and the most important thing was to protect the happiness I currently had. However, what happened today would always be a beautiful memory, a part of my past that could never be erased. When I got home, I tried to act as normal as possible. Daniel was sitting on the sofa, reading a book while the kids were fast asleep. He looked up when I walked in, smiling at me. "Did you have a good time at the reunion?" he asked, his voice gentle. I nodded, trying to keep my voice from betraying my unease. "It was great. I caught up with some old friends, and we had a lot to talk about." Daniel looked at me for a moment, then returned to his book. "I am glad you had a relaxing time with your friends. But remember, don't let it affect the family." I smiled at him, feeling a pang of guilt in my heart. "I know, don't worry." But when I went into the bedroom, I couldn't stop thinking about Leo. Today's encounter made me realize that the old feelings were still there, just buried under the dust of time. I wondered if Leo felt the same way. Perhaps he had also thought about the memories between us, about the times we talked after every basketball practice. I lay in bed, staring up at the ceiling, trying to lull myself to sleep. But every time I closed my eyes, Leo's image appeared, making my heart race. I knew I shouldn't feel this way, that my current life was more than enough and happy. But this excitement, the fluttering feeling when seeing someone you once had a crush on, was hard to ignore. In the days that followed, I tried to stay calm and not let Leo occupy too much of my thoughts. I focused on my family, on household chores, and tried to restore the normal rhythm of life I was used to. But I couldn't deny that whenever I had the chance, I would find a way to keep in touch with Leo, even if it was just a brief message to check in. Leo didn't avoid me either. He often texted me, asking how I was doing, sharing what he had been up to, and sometimes just reminiscing about the good old days. I knew I was treading on dangerous ground, but the feeling of reliving those past emotions was something I couldn't stop. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed and Daniel had retired to the bedroom, I sat alone in the living room with my phone in hand. I hesitated for a long time, then decided to text Leo. "Emily, Leo, I still cannot forget that reunion. It was so nice to see you again." A few minutes later, Leo replied, "Leo, I feel the same way. You still make me feel at ease and happy, just like in the old days. I am so glad we had the chance to meet again." My heart beat faster as I read those lines. Maybe I was doing something wrong, but I couldn't stop these feelings. I didn't want to destroy my current happy life, but at the same time, I didn't want to let go of what the reunion with Leo had brought back to me. My life began to get more complicated. I had to find a way to balance my family and the new feelings Leo had stirred up in me. Every time I met up with my old friends, I hoped to see Leo again, but I also feared that Daniel would find out. I knew I was playing a dangerous game, but the excitement and the fluttering feeling when being with Leo made it impossible for me to stop. And so, I continued to maintain this connection, one that I knew shouldn't exist but was too hard to let go. Time passed, and the emotions between Leo and me grew stronger. The brief exchanges through messages had become an integral part of my daily life. Every time I heard the phone beep with a new message, my heart would race, and I couldn't hide the anticipation when I saw Leo's name appear on the screen. Daniel remained oblivious. He continued to trust me, and I knew I was exploiting that trust. Every time I looked into his sincere eyes, I felt a deep sense of guilt. But at the same time, I couldn't stop thinking about Leo, couldn't let go of the feelings that had been awakened. One weekend, my old group of friends arranged to meet at our usual cafe. This time, Leo would be joining. When I arrived at the cafe, our eyes met, and the coffee tour. Our eyes met, and I felt a special connection. We sat next to each other, talking like old friends, but deep down, I knew there was more between us. Throughout the gathering, Leo and I frequently exchanged meaningful glances. Although there were friends around, it felt like there were only the two of us in our own world. Leo wasn't shy about asking me about my current life, about my family, and even about the feelings I was experiencing. "Leo, Emily, are you happy? I know this question might not be appropriate, but I cannot help asking." I was surprised by his question, but I couldn't avoid it. "I think so. I have a happy family, a good husband, and wonderful children. But..." Leo looked at me with understanding eyes. "I understand. Sometimes we have everything we need, but still feel like there's a missing piece." I nodded, feeling a connection with Leo. "You dare right. I cannot deny that meeting you again has made me remember the feelings I once had, feelings I thought were in the past." Leo smiled gently, a smile that was both warm and a little sad. "Emily, I feel the same. Seeing you again has brought back many beautiful memories but also made me confused. I don't want to cause any trouble for you, but I also cannot stop thinking about you." Leo's words made my heart race. I knew I shouldn't continue this conversation, but I couldn't stop. I had gone too far to turn back. "Emily, Leo, I don't want to hurt anyone, especially Daniel. But I cannot deny my feelings. I just don't know what to do next." Leo looked deep into my eyes, as if trying to convey something he couldn't say out loud. "I don't know either, Emily. But I think we need to be careful. No matter what, I don't want you to regret anything." The gathering ended, but the conversation between Leo and me haunted me for the rest of the day. I knew I was heading into a dangerous direction, but the fluttering feeling when being with Leo made it impossible for me to stop. I didn't want to hurt Daniel, but I also didn't want to let go of what I had rediscovered with Leo. On the way home, I tried to think about everything rationally. I told myself that I had to stop before things went too far, before Daniel noticed something and everything fell apart. But the more I thought about it, the more I felt like I was being drawn into a vortex with no escape. When I got home, I returned to my role as a wife and mother, trying to forget what had happened at the gathering. But deep down, I knew things would never be the same. I was living in two worlds, and I didn't know how to get out of this situation without hurting the people I loved the most. After the private meeting with Leo, I tried to convince myself that it was the last time. But this was not as easy as I thought. Leo and I started exchanging greetings through messages, initially just polite inquiries, but gradually I sensed an increasing concern from him. One day, while we were chatting, Leo told me he had just taken a new job as a basketball coach for a children's team in the area. The news surprised me, but it also sparked an idea. My son, Tommy, was only 4 years old but already very, very passionate about basketball. He always talked about wanting to become a professional player when he grew up. I thought this might be a great opportunity to help my son, and at the same time, it was a perfect excuse to see Leo without arousing suspicion. One afternoon, I told Daniel about my plan to have Tommy start basketball lessons. Daniel, always supportive of our children's dreams, immediately agreed. "That's a great idea, Emily," Daniel said as we sat at the dinner table. "Tommy will be thrilled to learn from a great coach." I smiled, feeling a bit guilty for not telling him the whole truth. Yes, I think it will be a great opportunity for him. The next day, I took Tommy to the basketball court where Leo was coaching. When we arrived, I saw Leo instructing a group of kids. He noticed us, and a warm smile spread across his face. "Emily, Tommy, it is great to see you two here." Leo greeted us with a cheerful voice. Tommy, already excited to start playing basketball, was immediately captivated by the court and the surroundings. I introduced Tommy to Leo, and he instantly became friendly with my son, asking about his passion for basketball. "Tommy, you really love basketball, don't you?" Leo asked, bending down to be at eye level with the boy. Tommy nodded enthusiastically, his eyes shining brightly. "Yes, I want to be the best player in the world." Leo laughed heartily. "Then we have to start practicing hard right now. Do you want to give it a try?" Tommy eagerly nodded, and within minutes he was running onto the court with the ball in hand, learning the basics from Leo. Watching my son happily practicing, I felt a sense of satisfaction, but also couldn't stop thinking about Leo. Every time he looked in my direction, I realized his gaze wasn't just the concern of a coach for a parent. After practice, Leo and I stood chatting while Tommy continued to play with the ball. The conversation initially revolved around basketball and how Tommy was adjusting to the team. But then, as usual, Leo began to express more personal concern. "Emily, I see you taking such good care of Tommy. He's really lucky to have a wonderful mother like you," Leo said, his tone soft and affectionate. I smiled, feeling a strange warmth in my heart. "Thank you, Leo. You are a great coach too. Tommy really likes you." Leo looked deep into my eyes, his gaze full of something more than just admiration. "I'm really happy to see you again, Emily. These moments make me feel like we were never apart." His words made my heart race wildly. I knew I shouldn't have let this conversation go any further, but the feeling of being close to Leo was too powerful to ignore. "I feel the same way, Leo. Everything." Leo stepped a little closer, his eyes never leaving mine. "Emily, I know we both have our own lives, but I cannot deny that there's still a special connection between us. I don't want to mess up your life, but I cannot deny my feelings." I took a deep breath, trying to stay rational. "Leo, we shouldn't take this any further. I don't want to destroy what I have." Leo nodded, but his eyes were still full of concern. "I understand, Emily. I just want you to know that no matter what, I am always here." We left the basketball court with a sense of ambiguity and full of emotions. I knew I was stepping into a dangerous relationship, but the excitement and fluttering feeling when being with Leo made it impossible for me to stop. And so, every week I continued to take Tommy to the basketball court, continued to seek those brief but meaningful moments with Leo, even though I knew everything could fall apart at any moment. In the following weeks, I continued to bring Tommy to the basketball court to practice with Leo. Each time I went, I kept telling myself that I was doing this for my son, for his dream. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just that. The training sessions had become the perfect excuse for me and Leo to continue seeing each other, to maintain a relationship that I knew was wrong but couldn't top. Leo increasingly showed concern for Tommy, and this didn't just stop at coaching. He frequently chatted with my son, sharing stories about his time as a basketball player. Tommy was thrilled and often told me what Leo had said. I couldn't deny that Leo was a great coach and a friend that Tommy greatly admired. But at the same time, Leo also continued to express special interest in me. Every time Tommy practiced, he always found a way for us to have some private time, even if it was just a few minutes, but those moments were full of meaning and emotion. One afternoon, after the practice session ended, Tommy was busy playing with his new friends on the team, leaving Leo and me to talk on the sidelines. As usual, Leo began the conversation with questions about my daily life, but this time he became more intimate. "Leo, Emily, I can't stop thinking about us. Every time I see you, I feel more and more that there's something very special between us." I looked at Leo, sensing the sincerity in his eyes, but at the same time I also felt a tug of war in my heart. Leo, I know. But I also know that this is wrong. I can nut. Leo gently placed his hand on mine, as if to reassure me. I understand, Emily. I don't want to pressure you. But you need to know that I am here, and I am willing to wait if you want. That gentle touch sent a jolt through my body. I knew I was standing on a very thin line between right and wrong. I wanted to stop, but I couldn't deny that Leo's concern and affection made me feel special, made me feel like the young, vibrant woman I once was. Tommy ran over, interrupting our moment, and I quickly pulled my hand away, trying to keep my composure. Mom, I did so well today. Leo says I have potential. I smiled at my son, feeling a mix of pride and guilt. That's right, honey. I am so proud of you. Leo stood up, smiling at both of us. Tommy is really good. If he keeps working hard, I believe he'll become an excellent player. On the way home, Tommy couldn't stop talking about the practice session and Leo's compliments. But in my heart, Leo's earlier words kept echoing. I knew I had gone too far, knew that if I continued, things could become irreparable. But the feeling of being with Leo, the concern and affection he showed me, made it impossible for me to stop. Every time Daniel asked about Tommy's practice, I felt like I was hiding something huge. He had no idea that Leo and I had crossed the line of a normal social relationship. But at the same time, I didn't want to lose what I had with Daniel and our family. That night, as I lay next to Daniel, I couldn't sleep. Thoughts of Leo, of the situation I was in, kept swirling in my mind. I knew I had to make a decision soon before things went too far, before I lost control. But that decision was too difficult. I didn't want to hurt anyone, but I also couldn't deny my true feelings. And so, I continued living in this turmoil, continued seeking those brief moments with Leo, even though I knew everything could fall apart at any moment. That weekend, I received a message from Leo, informing me that the old group of friends would meet as usual. Daniel fully trusted these gatherings, so I didn't feel anything was amiss as I prepared to leave the house. I put on a light dress, telling myself that today would just be a fun chat with old friends. When I arrived at the familiar cafe, I realized something was wrong. The place was empty, none of my friends were there. I was about to leave, but then I saw Leo sitting alone at a table, a gentle smile on his face when he saw me. Hello, Emily, Leo greeted me as I walked in, his voice warm as always. I sat down across from him, trying to stay composed. Hi, Leo. Where is everyone? Leo shrugged, a mysterious smile on his lips. They are all busy. I guess it was just the two of us today. I felt a bit uneasy, but that unease quickly faded as Leo started reminiscing about our school days. We talked about carefree days, basketball practices, late-night study sessions, and the innocent feelings of youth. After a while, Leo suggested, how about we take a walk? What do you think about visiting our old school? The idea surprised me, but it also stirred up a sense of nostalgia. I nodded in agreement, and we left the cafe together, walking down the familiar path that led back to the school we had once attended. When we arrived at the school gates, it felt as though time had turned back. Everything seemed unchanged, from the rows of trees to the classrooms. We walked into the schoolyard, where so many memories had taken place. Leo looked around, his eyes filled with longing. Emily, I've wanted to tell you this for a long time, but I didn't have the courage. Back then, I had a crush on you, but I didn't dare confess. You were always someone I admired, but I was afraid that if I said something, we wouldn't be friends anymore. My heart started to race as I listened to his words. Leo, I don't know what to say. I had similar feelings back then, but I didn't dare admit them either. Leo moved closer to me, his eyes filled with sincerity. Emily, I don't want to hide anymore. Since I met you again, those feelings have come back stronger than ever. I love you, and I've loved you since then. I don't want to keep living without telling you this. I stood frozen, feeling my heart beating wildly. Memories of youth, of first love, all came back to me. Even though I knew I shouldn't, I couldn't deny that I still loved Leo, my first love. Those feelings hadn't faded over time, but had been buried under the layers of my current life. Leo, I stammered, my voice trembling. I don't want to hide either. I cannot deny that I still love you too. But what are we supposed to do? I cannot abandon my family. Leo looked at me, his eyes filled with both pain and desire. I know this isn't easy, Emily. But I also can't up on what I feel. I am willing to wait, willing to do whatever it takes, as long as you know that I love you and I'm always here for you. My heart was torn between two emotions. I loved Daniel and didn't want to hurt him, but the feelings for Leo were too powerful to ignore. In the end, I couldn't resist the temptation of first love. I stepped closer, feeling the warmth of Leo's body. Leo, I cannot say no to this, but I also don't know what to do. Leo placed his hand on my cheek, his eyes full of love. Emily, we'll find a way. I don't want to force you, but I also can't stop loving you. Just give me a chance, and I'll do everything to make us happy. And then, in that moment, I couldn't resist any longer. We crossed the line, no longer just vague words or meaningful glances. We began a relationship that I knew was wrong, but I couldn't let go. This relationship brought me joy, the excitement of first love, but it was also full of anxiety and danger. I knew I was risking a lot, but I couldn't deny the feelings I had buried for so long. Tommy's basketball lessons with Leo quickly became a routine in my life. Every week, I took my son to practice, and it was also the time when Leo and I could be together, even if it was just for brief moments filled with emotion. Tommy was thrilled with the practice, gradually getting used to his new friends, even those older than him, and that made me feel relieved knowing that my son was enjoying the opportunity I had created. But behind Tommy's joy, I knew I was playing a dangerous game. Leo, with his charm and intense affection, didn't just stop at basketball coaching. Whenever there was an opportunity, he always found a way for us to secretly be together, away from everyone's eyes. One afternoon, when Tommy was busy playing with his new friends on the team, Leo approached me, his eyes filled with determination. "Emily, let us go for a walk," he said, his voice warm and inviting. I knew this wasn't just a simple invitation to walk. I could feel the anticipation and longing in Leo's eyes. Unable to refuse, I nodded, and we started walking away from the basketball court, looking for a quieter place. Leo led me to a secluded corner behind the practice field, where there was a small garden that few people knew about. When we arrived, Leo gently took my hand, pulling me closer to him. "Emily, every time I see you, I feel my feelings for you growing stronger," Leo said, his eyes locked onto mine. "I cannot stop thinking about you, about what we've shared, and I want more." I felt my heart racing as I listened to his words. I knew this was wrong, but the closeness to Leo made me forget all boundaries, all logic. I couldn't resist this temptation. "Leo, I can't deny my feelings either," I admitted, my voice trembling. "But we cannot let this go any further. I have a family, and I don't want to hurt anyone." Leo leaned down, his lips just inches from mine. "Emily, we only have these moments. If you feel the same way I do, let us enjoy this, even if it's just for a moment." And then, unable to resist any longer, I closed my eyes, letting my emotions guide me. Leo leaned down and kissed me, and I couldn't stop myself from responding. In that moment, everything around us disappeared, leaving only Leo and me, caught in a whirlwind of emotion and passion. After that, every time I took Tommy to practice, Leo and I would find a way to secretly meet. Even if it was just for brief moments, we couldn't let go of this intimacy. We knew it was dangerous, that everything could fall apart at any moment, but neither of us could stop. Tommy had no idea what was happening. He was just focused on practicing, making friends, and doing his best to become a great basketball player. I felt a tug of war in my heart, knowing I was deceiving my son, but I couldn't let go of what I had with Leo. My life gradually became a play, where I had to constantly act as the perfect mother and wife, while at the same time keeping my relationship with Leo hidden. I knew I was walking a dangerous path, but I didn't know how to stop, didn't know how to escape the whirlwind of love and betrayal I had thrown myself into. For months, Leo and I continued to maintain our secret relationship without anyone finding out. I had become adept at balancing family life with the passionate encounters with Leo. We met regularly, seeking out secluded spots where we could be together without being seen. Those moments were filled with happiness, but also with the thrill of having to keep everything hidden. Tommy continued to learn basketball under Leo's guidance, and I felt reassured to see my son improving day by day. But at the same time, I was always worried that one day everything would be exposed. Every time I looked into Daniela's eyes, I felt a deep sense of guilt, but I couldn't let go of Leo. He was the man I had loved since my youth, and those feelings were as strong as ever. Then one day, Leo met me after Tommy's practice with a serious expression. I immediately knew something was wrong. "Emily, I need to tell you something," Leo began, his voice low. "I've just received an offer from a prestigious basketball training center abroad. They want me to go there to enhance my skills and develop my career. This is a big opportunity, and I can't refuse." Leo's words made my heart tighten. I knew his career was important, but the thought of him having to leave me was something I hadn't that considered. "How long will you be gone?" I asked, my voice small and full of worry. Leo looked deep into my eyes as if trying to memorize every detail of my face. "At least a year, maybe longer. But that means we have to put everything on hold. I don't want this, but I know I have no choice." I felt tears welling up, but I tried to stay calm. "Leo, I understand. I know your career is important. But I cannot hide the pain of thinking about us having to part." Leo held my hand tightly, his eyes filled with longing. "Emily, you have to know that no matter where I go, no matter how long, I'll always think of you. You are someone special in my life, and I'll never forget what we had." I couldn't hold back any longer, tears streaming down as I hugged Leo tightly. "I'll miss you too, Leo. I don't know what I will do without you here." We stood there, hugging in silence, feeling close for the last time before parting. Both of us knew this relationship couldn't last forever, but that truth didn't ache the pain of parting any less. When Leo had to leave, I took him to the airport, and we shared one last emotional kiss. Leo looked at me one last time before walking away, his eyes saying that this was only goodbye, not the end. "Emily, I'll come back, and when I do, we'll talk about the future. But no matter what, I hope you'll be happy," Leo said, his voice low but full of determination. I nodded, trying to smile through the tears. "I'll wait for you, Leo, but no matter what, I hope you succeed in whatever you do." Leo squeezed my hand one last time before turning and walking away. I stood there, watching his figure gradually disappear, my heart heavy with conflicting emotions. I knew my life would never be the same again, but I also understood that this was the right thing for both of us. And so, Leo left, leaving behind a huge void in me that I didn't know how to fill. I returned to family life, trying to focus on Tommy and Daniel, but in my heart, I always longed for the image of Leo, the person I knew I would never forget.
Switching back to Daniel's perspective. After confronting the painful truth my wife had just admitted, my whole world seemed to collapse. The days following Emily's confession were like a living nightmare. Every morning when I looked in the mirror, I saw a man I no longer recognized. The dark circles under my eyes, the hollow face, and the bleeding wound in my heart that wouldn't heal. I kept asking myself, what should I do now? Should I stay for the sake of the children? Or should I handle this situation differently? When I looked into my son's innocent eyes, I saw my entire world reflected in them. He was the only hope left in this shattered life. I wondered if staying, trying to mend this relationship for the sake of the children, was the right thing to do. But at the same time, I knew that if I forgave, the relationship between Emily and me would never be the same again. The trust, the love, everything had been destroyed and couldn't be restored. I remembered that night when Emily tearfully confessed, her tears, her words full of sorrow about loneliness and weakness, but none of that made me feel any better. Every time I remembered it, I felt nothing but searing pain, as if my heart was being crushed, leaving me unable to breathe. We had once had a marriage that I thought was perfect. A happy family, a cozy home, and both our careers were on the rise. But now, all of that seemed meaningless. I couldn't stop thinking about Leo, the man Emily had betrayed me with. The thought that she might still have feelings for him drove me crazy. Every time I thought of them together, I felt like I was burning from the inside. Work was no longer a refuge for me. In those days, I worked mechanically, without feeling any joy or motivation. My colleagues didn't understand what was happening to me, and I didn't want to share. This was a pain too private, too personal, that I didn't want anyone else to know about. I started avoiding family and friends. I didn't want anyone to see me in this state of weakness, and I didn't want to have to explain why I had become this way. I feared they would judge me, or worse, they would start to question our marriage. That would only add to the pain I was already enduring. But the hardest part was facing Emily every day. Every time I looked into her eyes, I couldn't stop thinking about the betrayal. Although she was trying to make things normal again, I knew we could never go back to the way we were. The crack in our relationship was too deep, and I wasn't sure if it could ever be mended. I wondered if staying was really the best thing for our son. He needed a family, but would a broken family, where parents no longer love and trust each other, be the right environment for him? I didn't want my son to grow up in a family that only existed in name, without genuine love. But leaving meant giving up everything I had built. I would lose my family, lose the child I loved so much. I didn't know if I could bear that pain. Those long sleepless nights, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, asking myself, is there another way? Is there a way we can mend this relationship without causing more harm? but I knew whatever path I chose, it wouldn't be easy. Every decision I made now carried heavy consequences, not just for me but also for Emily and our son. I had to think carefully. I had to consider everything before making the final decision. But one thing I was sure of was that whatever decision I made, it would change my life forever.